to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, on site, on location at the AAC Kickoff in Arlington, Texas. And we are in the Heritage Hill Travel Studios, and for the first time ever, welcoming the Army Black Knights to the American Athletic Conference and head coach Jeff Monken. Coach, how are you?
Very well. Good to see you.
Good to see you, too.
We're glad to be here.
So I want to start with connecting to the United States Army beyond football. My family served in World War II. My grandfather was 18 years old, front lines of Germany. My great-uncle Vincent was in Japan. My great-uncle Bucky was captured and put into the Auschwitz concentration camp. Every single one of them made it home safe and sound.
Wow.
So what does it mean to you to have the United States Army as the backbone of this football program, of this institution, that it is so much more than simply football?
Well, first, let me say, I know that's a source of pride for you and your family, and it will be for generations to follow. That's incredible to have that history. We wear the uniforms of the United States Army.
Yeah.
And to wear those colors, to wear that uniform, and to represent those men and women that serve, our veterans who have served, is an incredible responsibility and obligation that we have to them to represent them well. So I assure you that our players, our coaches, our entire institution takes a great sense of pride in knowing that we represent the greatest fighting force that mankind has ever known, as the United States Army.
And we look at the world in general and kind of the politics of everything, and things just maybe not being where they were. As a kid, there was a deep respect for me and my family, of course, for the United States Army beyond family. Mm-hmm. What can we do, or do you feel like is the spotlight in the right place? Because to me, it is imperative that your institution, that the military in general, as well as the Army, is given a tremendous amount of respect, because the fact that I can sit here and do what I love and speak freely is thanks to the United States Army.
Well, we as a nation owe a debt of gratitude to our men and women that serve that we simply can't pay back.
Yeah.
It is because we have fellow Americans who are willing to stand in the gap between freedom and those that want to take it from us that we have the privileges that we enjoy every day. And so we do have them to thank. But our men and women that serve, they have a heart to serve.
Yeah.
And they don't do it for thanks. They don't do it for recognition or popularity. They do it because they have a heart to serve, and there's a calling for them, and thankfully we have Americans that are born every day that are going to make that pledge and take that commitment, and so that to me is what makes this country very special. It's an all voluntary military, and every day there are more men and women who are our fellow Americans who are going to recruiting centers and committing to service academies, going to ROTC programs and in colleges and high schools that have a desire to serve. And so we have a thanks that we owe to each one of our service members. And so hopefully the citizens of this country will continue to respect and appreciate our men and women who have made that pledge.
And you speak about making that pledge. It's unique at Army that they're students, they're athletes, but they're also in this world of service. To oversee them, how have these men over the years challenged you to be your best self?
When I was hired at West Point in 2014, Lieutenant General Bob Beretta was the superintendent, and he's very special to me because he hired me.
Yeah.
Boo Corrigan was the athletics director, Bob Beretta, the leadership team there at the academy, and the opportunity that they gave me certainly make those people special to me. And I feel very privileged and honored to be a part of the West Point community and to be the coach there. But General Beretta always, often and continually talked about living and leading honorably. And he was an example to me. He was an example to all of us at West Point under his leadership of honorable living and leading honorably.
Yeah.
And that being a part of that community, having this sense of responsibility as a leader at West Point to do the harder right instead of the easier wrong. That's where we live, and that's there's nothing more important in our jobs, in our positions as leaders at West Point, than to teach our young people to live and to lead honorably. And so that certainly influenced me. And we all strive to be people of integrity and of honor, but there's a sense of obligation that you feel when you're in a position like that, knowing that our example as leaders to these young men and women that come to West Point, that will serve in the Army and lead soldiers and lead Army units. It's a responsibility that we have to teach them to live and lead honorably by doing that ourselves.
And you speak on leadership. You and I talked about this off the air, and I appreciate all your responses because you don't know this, but I've waited years for the opportunity to sit in with you. This is something I've wanted to do, and so I'm very thankful that you've given me this chance. Bob Beretta is someone that spent 34 years at West Point. Him and I met immediately after he had left there at Lemoyne in what my company I created called the Exclusive Multimedia Marketing Partnership, and helping Lemoyne and really any college or university to be different out there and have a different spotlight that spans across all of their athletic programs, men and women. And I'm very hard-pressed to find a leader better, and honestly have never had a better mentor. So what are your thoughts on Bob Beretta?
What an incredible person he is, number one. He and I had never met before I went to West Point, and almost instantly I felt a connection with Bob. But I think he makes everybody feel that way. He just got that personality and that temperament and demeanor, and he wants to support the team he's a part of in any way that he can, supporting coaches, encouraging coaches, but such a humility about service. And Bob, for all the responsibilities that he had in our athletic department, he would still always ask my opinion and always ask my thoughts if it had anything to do with football. And he could make a decision or make a recommendation or have an opinion without asking me. He didn't have to ask me, but he always did.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that. And he was always just so encouraging and positive, and even when we had struggles the first couple of years I was there, you know what? I knew that guy was going to be in our corner. I knew I could count on Bob Beretta. And so he's a tremendous leader, incredibly humble. I knew that he would have success if he ever decided to go be an athletics director at another school. And I'm glad he did. And now he's got a second opportunity to do that. Yeah. And it probably won't be his last. He'll do great things there at St. Bonaventure, and he'll have another opportunity. So I'm really happy for him. He's a great guy. He's a great friend, and a tremendous leader.
Do you know that wherever he is, whatever he's doing, he always has Army football games on his phone?
That I would not expect anything less, because most of the games he's still watching, he's scheduled.
Yes,
so
yeah.
He was a big part of that for so many years for us. He did so many things at Army, just the different roles and the different hats that he wore. But I know that he feels this great sense of pride in watching our team play, and he still sends me encouraging text messages and congratulatory messages, and so I really appreciate that.
You speak about scheduling and being independent in football for so long. You're creating schedules years and years now. He was talking to me about the 2030s. And joining the American, you have to change the schedule. You have to commit to some, take away from others. How do you kind of go about all of that as an institution of trying to keep relationships that you've built, obviously, and at the same time honor the fact that you have to play 8 conference games?
Well, fortunately, that responsibility fell on Mike Buddy, our athletics director.
Yeah.
And most of the schools were very understanding, and with all the changes in college football, they kind of just said good luck to you, and we tore up the contract basically. There were a few that are going to collect from us, but that's part of the deal. It's part of the business of college football and college athletics. But it was interesting to see how our scheduling model had evolved from when I first arrived to what it had become because of the changes in college football.
Yeah.
The teams joining other leagues, them having to cancel other games, forced other opponents that we had. I mean, the 6 degrees of separation for a game being canceled could be 3 conferences away.
Yeah.
A team changes conferences, they cancel a game, forces them to cancel a game with us. And that became really challenging to build a schedule for the years going out. And so I know that this kind of creates a set schedule for us, but there's enough teams in this league that the games are going to change every couple of years. We'll have a conference schedule for these 2 years of our initial years in the conference, but in 2026 we'll have 4 new teams come onto the schedule and 4 teams leave.
Yeah.
And it's going to create other rivalries, opportunities for us to play different places, different stadiums, other states, and that'll be exciting for our fans and for our players, and it's just the right time. It's just the right time for us to make the move.
And you said it's the right time to make the move. Navy was independent for so long and then made that decision to go into the American years ago. And here is Army, 2/3 of our military institutions. Do we call Air Force now and say, come on in?
Regionally, I don't know that it makes sense for them. Their league probably makes a lot of sense for them for travel and proximity of opponents, and so this is for where we recruit and where we're located geographically, the opponents in the conference, and this is a good move for us. It's a good fit for us.
Army Navy not considered a conference game, still going to be on its own week. There is a chance that Army and Navy could play each other in back-to-back weeks if you play for an AAC title and then play the Army-Navy game. What are your thoughts on that fact? And Tim Pernetti was asked if he'd like to see Army-Navy become a conference game, and he talked about the opportunity to have the conversation. So what are your thoughts on that?
I like the fact that it's a sacred day in college football, that we have our own day to play the Army-Navy game. I think it means so much to this country, and maybe not every college football fan or every American would say that, but that game is the only game where all 22 competitors on the field and all 4,000 of their classmates of each school sitting in the stands, between 8,000 and 9,000 young men and women that attend that game, including the 22 competitors that people are watching on TV, are willing to put their lives on the line for everybody else that's watching. There's no other game like that. So there's a sacredness to that game, and I'm glad that we have our own day to celebrate that. I hope that we have the opportunity to worry about playing in a conference championship game and playing the Army-Navy game.
Yeah.
Whether it'll be against Navy or not, I don't know. But I hope we'll have the opportunity to do that. That means we had a great year and a chance to play for a conference championship. But that's going to be an incredible challenge for us. It's hard to win one college football game. It's hard to win a game.
Yeah.
But to win in this league, the talent in this league, the great coaches in this league, it'll be a challenge for us.
And we know that going into this season, there's the opportunity of a return offensively to some things that we know, but also to have some wrinkles. How would you describe the offense for Army?
Our philosophy hasn't changed. We want to run the ball better than anybody in the country. How that's presented, how we're going to be structured on offense is secondary to the fact that we want to be able to run the ball effectively. We didn't do that well enough last year, and we didn't do it well enough in 2022. The rule changes with block and below the waist, I think, certainly had an effect on how we attempted to execute in 2022. It was the impetus for the change in 2023, but I'm not sure what we did in 2023 completely is a perfect fit for us. It's important for us to find a fit for what we can do, the players that we have, the guys that we can recruit in the future, and so hopefully our offense will be a conglomeration of the things that we have done in the past, the things that we've done more recently, to kind of put the best things together in a package.
Before we jump into rapid fire, where you as a coach get to put me on the hot seat, which is something coaches never get to do, is looking at the other side of that Army-Navy matchup in Brian Newberry. What can you say about, because it was Kenny Matalolo for such a long time, what can you say about Brian and that relationship? Is it, an Army-Navy day, is it a quick handshake and have a good day, brother? Or, I mean, bring me into how fiercely competitive that moment is, and just your thoughts on Brian.
Brian's a tremendous football coach. I think he's gained the respect of everybody in college football with the defenses that he's coached at Navy and in this league. And Brian worked for Brian Bohannon at Kennesaw State, who's a great friend of mine. And Brian Bohannon thinks the world of Brian Newberry. So very well respected in the profession. I had no relationship with Brian prior to him becoming the coach at Navy. I've met him a couple of times, but frankly, in this rivalry, he and I really don't have anything to talk about. I don't know what we're going to talk about, the weather or the color of the carpeting. I mean, we compete in everything that we do. We compete in recruiting. We compete on Saturday afternoons. We compete in everything, and so he's a great competitor, and certainly on the day of the Army-Navy game, there's no more fiercely competitive event or fiercely competed event than the Army-Navy game. Those are two teams that are fighting tooth and nail for 60 minutes or more. I mean, it is the most intense competition I've ever been a part of, and he's done a great job in that game.
Love that. All right, well, put me on the hot seat, Coach. What's your first question for me? Could be football or anything.
All right. Give me your take on the Army program.
Honestly, I think that over these last few years, we've had the opportunity of seeing you grow. We've had the opportunity of seeing some more national respect at times, which I think has been great. And I think on the program, I can speak to, now I'm sitting next to you, but for years, I only heard good things about Coach Monken with this, Coach Monken with that. And I think the level of respect that you've garnered, and just hearing that, especially from Bob Beretta, who I tremendously hold to a high esteem, I think that the program is in good hands. I'm happy that you're there. And I think that I'm very excited about this because I wanted to connect with Army, and I've been connected to the American, and the fact that these paths have crossed the way that they did in the poetic kind of way that this happened is a beautiful thing. But about your program, it's so much more than football, as you know. And it's good to sit next to somebody that I've only heard good things about to actually see in action what some of these people have said.
Where's the American go in terms of expansion if there's going to be growth, or if there are members that leave? Where's the American go? Who are the other teams around the country that that you feel like in the group of five are the elite teams that we would want to pursue?
I mean, I think if you look at the Sun Belt, and what Appalachian State and what Coastal Carolina have done, they've been the darlings of the Sun Belt. I think if you make a play for them, that takes away the identifiers of the Sun Belt. And in no way, shape, or form am I saying anything negative about the Sun Belt. I'm just stating that on my mind, Coastal Carolina. I think in the MAC, to give another New York school, I like what Buffalo's done in certain cases. I think Buffalo is a great city and a very hard-nosed city. So I think the Bulls would be a place for the American to look at. And I've actually mentioned that to Mike Resco years ago. I talked to Mike about when there was teams remaining in the pack. I talked to him about the Cal Stanford, Oregon State, Washington State. I know that question was asked to Tim Pernetti, and I think that when you're called the American, you can be coast to coast. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot of value in that. Honestly, I would like to see the American pay tribute to the old Big East and to go after maybe if the ACC is left open, some of those teams that would make sense in a return. I think having a Temple and a BC together. I think having Syracuse and Army play more often, and Syracuse being my hometown. I think that there's teams that should have waited and considered the American before jumping, and I think that the Northeast football should have more opportunity. I think the American being in so many different states and so tremendous cities is great, but I've long since really talked to Mike about you need a New York identifier, and now they have it in West Point. So I don't think expansion is over. I did not get that from Tim Pernetti in our very lengthy conversation. I think that it's very much alive, and I think anyone is on the table. And there was a plan that I had set in place, and if you go back and read this article that I wrote about what could have happened, I think the American could have ended the Big 12. And there was a world where Baylor and Texas Tech and some of this expanded the Texas realm of it, and the American was going to rise to the Power Four that is now, essentially. So I think Tim is advantageous. I think Tim is hungry, and I think that people are going to, if you're in a room with Tim Pernetti, I have the belief that he is going to make a case, and he's going to be a tough guy to say no to.
What's the toughest place to play in this league? What stadium?
Oh, boy. Toughest place to play. I mean, when UCF was here, I would have said the Bounce House. But I would say, having experienced some but not all, I think UTSA provides a great environment. I obviously think that Army-Navy during your game is unmatched, and I know that's outside of the realm of the conference games, but I would say Army-Navy, being with you both being in here now, puts even more weight on it, whether or not it's considered an AAC game. And then I would probably, like I said, I'd probably say UTSA. And I'm excited for the future. I know it's not done yet, but South Florida finally getting an on-campus stadium, I think is going to change the dynamic. And I liked FAU and Boca Raton. I did like being there. So it's hard to pick one, but I've already talked to your staff about the fact that I very much would like to be on campus at West Point this season. You got one more for me, non-football related?
Non-football. What's your favorite place to go on vacation?
Oh, boy. Probably Florida, because it's a second home for me personally. It's a second home of my company, and I built my own company. We just turned 12 years old. I'll be 21 years a broadcaster in November. I worked with ESPN, Fox, and Yahoo affiliates, and working for myself longer than I've worked for all of them combined has been a blessing. And Florida, we do a lot of work down in Florida. So I'm going to say the state of Florida, but I would like to visit Italy and Spain to see my family.
Nice.
So Jeff Monken, finally, a long time coming, folks, here. The Army Black Knights head football coach in their first season in the American, here on Wake Up Call for the AAC Kickoff. Coach Monken, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Beat Navy.
Appreciate it.